From a modest Corsican officer to the most feared man in Europe, what forces propelled Napoleon Bonaparte to seize power in revolutionary France? In this episode of History in under 15 minutes, we'll trace the meteoric rise of a military prodigy, whose ambition, timing, and tactical genius changed the world. Before the coronation, before the empire, before Waterloo, there was a young man, shaped by revolution, war, and relentless drive. This is the beginning of his story. Early life in Corsica. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, in Ajaccio, the capital of Corsica, just a year after France purchased the island from the Republic of Genoa. Though technically born a French citizen, Napoleon's identity was shaped by the fiercely independent Corsican culture that resisted French domination. His family belonged to the minor Italian-speaking nobility, more proud than prosperous. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, was a lawyer and political opportunist who initially supported Corsican nationalist policy, but later switched allegiance to the French in order to secure favor and opportunities. This decision would forever alter Napoleon's path. Thanks to Carlo's connections and ambition, young Napoleon received a scholarship to study in mainland France, a rare privilege for a Corsican from an early age. Napoleon was intelligent, intense, and self-possessed. However, his relocation to France in 1779 to attend school at Autun, and later Brienne-le-Château, was a harsh awakening. He was an outsider, mocked for his Corsican accent, darker complexion, and regional manners. His classmates viewed him as a foreigner, and he endured constant bullying and social isolation. But rather than break him, this exclusion hardened his resolve. He immersed himself in studies, particularly mathematics and history, developing a fascination with great leaders of the past: Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Hannibal. At age 15, Napoleon was accepted into the École Militaire in Paris, France's foremost military academy. After the death of his father in 1785, his family's finances deteriorated further, and Napoleon was forced to accelerate his studies. Revolution and opportunity. When the French Revolution broke out in 1789, it sent shockwaves through every level of French society. Centuries of monarchy and aristocratic privilege were swept away almost overnight. The king was dethroned, the feudal system was abolished, and the political order was plunged into radical transformation. For many members of the nobility and officer class, the revolution spelled doom. Some fled into exile, others were guillotined, and many more simply faded into irrelevance. But for ambitious young men without powerful connections like Napoleon Bonaparte, the revolution was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was a world turned upside down, and he saw in the chaos a ladder he could climb. Napoleon, although born into minor nobility, was still considered an outsider by much of the French elite. He had little wealth, no influential patron, and a Corsican accent that marked him as different. But the revolution changed the rules of the game. Napoleon embraced the revolutionary ideals of meritocracy and republicanism, though more out of pragmatism than deep ideological conviction. He wrote political tracts and pamphlets denouncing royalist forces and praising the new republic. Napoleon's loyalty to the revolution earned him political favor, but it was his tactical brilliance at the Siege of Toulon in 1793 that truly put him on the map. Royalist rebels had handed over the crucial naval port of Toulon to the British, giving them a strategic stronghold in southern France. The revolutionary forces needed a miracle. As a young artillery captain, Napoleon proposed a bold plan to take the high ground above the port and bombard the British ships into retreat. His superiors were skeptical, climbing the ranks. Italian campaign in 1796. The Directory entrusted Napoleon with command of the army of Italy. It was a thankless post. His troops were unpaid, poorly equipped, and demoralized. But where others saw defeat, Napoleon saw glory. He restructured the army, inspired his men with fiery speeches, and launched a bold campaign through the Alps. In rapid succession, he defeated Austrian and Piedmontese forces, winning battles at Matinat, Lodi, and Arcole. Each victory expanded French control and enhanced his reputation. Back home, but Napoleon didn't just win on the battlefield, he dominated the narrative. His military bulletins glorified his exploits, turning him into a national hero. He commissioned artists to paint triumphant scenes, and his dispatches were printed in newspapers across France. In Italy, he negotiated treaties as if he were a head of state, not a general. He looted immense wealth, redirected it to Paris, and returned as a man of fame, fortune, and formidable influence. The Italian campaign had transformed him from power and politics. The return to France. When Napoleon returned to France in 1797 after his wildly successful Italian campaign, he was met with an outpouring of public adoration. Parades lined the streets of Paris, and crowds gathered to glimpse the young general whose victories had brought glory and much-needed plunder to a struggling republic. He was not simply celebrated as a military hero, he was viewed as a symbol of competence, order, and strength in a nation desperate for all three. The government he returned to, the Directory, was unraveling. France in the late 1790s was politically exhausted and deeply fractured. The five-man executive leadership was riddled with corruption and inefficiency, unable to stabilize the economy or suppress domestic unrest. Inflation had made everyday life unaffordable, food shortages persisted, and monarchist factions sought to undo the revolution's gains. Meanwhile, foreign wars dragged on with no clear end in sight. But military strength was not his only weapon. Napoleon was acutely aware of the power of image and public opinion. He carefully curated his own legend through propaganda. Beyond the press, he moved strategically within Parisian high society. He cultivated relationships with France's most cunning and influential figures: Charles Maurras de Talleyrand, the manipulative diplomat; Joseph Fouché, the calculating master of police; and various financiers and former revolutionaries who saw in Napoleon both a ticket to power and a safeguard against total collapse. He also began courting Josephine de Beauharnais, a well-connected widow with ties to powerful political circles. The coup of 18 Brumaire, laying the foundation by late 1799, the Directory had lost all credibility. France was exhausted, politically fragmented, economically unstable, and militarily overextended. Sensing the perfect storm, Napoleon conspired with Emmanuel Sieyès, a senior member of the Directory, to stage a coup. On November 9, 1799-18, Brumaire, year 8 of the revolutionary calendar, Napoleon made his move. Under the guise of a Jacobin threat, he used troops to intimidate the legislative councils and force them to relocate from Paris to Saint-Cloud. Though the coup met with resistance, Napoleon's resolve and the presence of loyal grenadiers prevailed. He dissolved the Directory and established the consulate, a new system of government with 3 consuls. But the structure was a facade. Real power resided in the hands of the first consul, Napoleon himself. He had taken control not by force alone, but through manipulation, political alliances, and a promise to restore stability. The revolution had devoured its kings and its radicals, themes that shaped Napoleon's rise. Several powerful forces helped shape Napoleon's dramatic ascent. First and foremost was meritocracy, the ideal that individuals could rise based on talent rather than birth. Napoleon was the revolution's greatest beneficiary in this regard, rising from an outsider Corsican boy to master of France. He also understood the power of myth. Through controlled reports, portraits, and public performances, he shaped his own legend, presenting himself as invincible, visionary, and destined. Another central theme was crisis. Napoleon thrived in uncertainty. While others hesitated during instability, he saw opportunities to assert leadership. He was a man of action in a time of paralysis. His blend of charisma, strategic genius, and calculated propaganda made him irresistible to a people desperate for order. Finally, his dual identity, Corsican by culture, French by allegiance, allowed him to see beyond conventional boundaries. He was both insider and outsider, revolutionary and conservative. Cliffhanger: the empire awaits. By the close of 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte had climbed from provincial obscurity to the pinnacle of French political life. As first consul, he now wielded more power than any figure since the fall of the monarchy. But he was not done. The consulate would soon become a stage for his next transformation, from Republican guardian to self-crowned emperor. In the years to come, he would reshape France with legal reforms, consolidate power with iron will, and wage wars that redrew the map of Europe. Every ascent hides the shadow of a fall. In our next episode, Napoleon, Part 2, the Emperor Rises, will follow him as he takes the throne, defies papal authority, and plunges the continent into the Napoleonic Wars. But for now, we leave him standing at the edge of empire, the revolution behind him, and destiny ahead. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. What do you think truly drove Napoleon? Belief in revolutionary ideals or sheer ambition? Let's discuss.